Hey, welcome to another installment of Celebrity Profiles here on Live from Dennis's House. Today we're going to be talking to Adrienne Barbeau, the great actress, singer, dancer, author, and renowned sex symbol, of course. She was the original Rizzo in Grease on Broadway. She played in Fiddler on the Roof with Bette Midler. She was in Pippin. And then, of course, her breakout role in the 70s was Carol Trainer on the sitcom Maude, which starred B. Arthur. They were the first, I would say, feminist, and it was a groundbreaking TV show, and it was hysterical. She stayed on there many years. And then in the 80s, she started starring in sci-fi movies and these horror movies, and they weren't just any, they were classics like The Fog, Creep Show, Swamp Thing, Escape from New York. And that's where she met her husband, John Carpenter, the famous horror director. And then during the 90s, she lent her voice to voiceovers and cartoons, the Batman animated series. She was the voice of Catwoman. And then she did video games, and she released an album of her singing. She has a great voice. And then she was on a lot of TV shows, and she's still doing movies, still doing plays, everything. And she's been in a lot of my favorite TV shows and movies, classics. She was in Sons of Anarchy, Carnival, HBO shows, great show. Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield, Cannonball Run with Burt Reynolds, Escape from New York with Kurt Russell, and she's also an author. She's written 3 novels, she's written her memoirs, and it's just an amazing career. So we're going to start off with some music, and then we're going to get back to talking to Adrienne Barbeau. On the phone with us now is the great Adrienne Barbeau. So Adrienne, we're going to wrap up your entire life within 20 minutes or so. So let's start from the beginning, your early life, your childhood. Where did you grow up? How did you grow up? And how did you first get into acting?
Oh, boy, Dennis, if we've only got 20 minutes, you better send your listeners to my memoir, and they can get all of the details there. There are worse things I could do. It's just going to be published digitally this month. But anyway, I grew up in California, all over the state, spent my summers on a grape farm in Selma, California, and finally settled in San Jose, California, which is the San Francisco Bay Area, and finished high school, did community theater all the time I was in high school in San Jose, and finished high school and immediately went to what was in those days called the Orient. We were right on the DMZ in North Korea and Japan and Taiwan and Okinawa, an atomic testing center called Johnston Island, entertaining the armed forces, doing a musical comedy review.
Wow.
Came back, started college, decided maybe I should go to New York to learn my craft, and moved to New York when I was 19, and my first Broadway show was Fiddler on the Roof. Shared a dressing room with Bette Midler. I'm really hitting the high points here.
Yeah, well, yeah. Let's talk about that. Let's talk.
And then won a Tony nomination for my role as Rizzo in the original Broadway production of Grease. That brought me back to L.A. to do Maude for 6 years. Right. And then that led to all of the rest of the TV and the ghosts and the horror and everything else. And finally ended up, I'm still doing it. And but I added writing to my resume about 10 years ago and wrote a memoir and then wrote a series of vampire novels, one of which is hopefully going to be coming to the big screen soon. And that's my life. In that, on that aspect, my real life is I've got 3 great kids, and they're everything. they take precedence for everything.
Wow, that's a great career, and you wrapped it up in like 1 minute. Your whole
I
life,
did.
1 minute. So let's go back and start going into details of some of these things now. So you went to New York City. You're a young girl all by yourself. What do you remember about that time?
Well, the first apartment I ever got, I answered an ad in the New York Times for 2 girls who were looking for a roommate. I'd never heard of a security deposit, and I'd only taken $200 with me, and the bank was sending the rest of the $800 that I had saved. But these girls took my security deposit, and I couldn't move in for a couple of weeks, so I went to New Jersey, stayed with a friend, and finally moved in, and then realized that one of them was turning tricks, and the other one was stealing my clothes. And in the meantime, the bank never got my money. It had been deposited in someone else's account, so it was a rocky start. But
Wow.
but it was a fantastic 8 years of my life, and I just, I still remember all of it very, very clearly.
Now, I
And
actually...
easy when it came time to write. There were worse things I could do. Of course, I kept a journal since the time I was 12, so I've got most of it about personal stuff. I didn't.
Yeah.
Opening night of Grease, I don't make any mention. I'm talking about the guy I'm dating. But I do. Those years are very clear in my mind.
Now, I actually, I was just perusing YouTube last night, and I saw your first appearance on Johnny Carson. Do you recall this? He was like, you made him blush. I never saw anyone make him so uncomfortable. And you were talking about being the only virgin in New York City at that time.
Well, it was a good story.
Yeah, it was
when
great.
I first got to New York, I was working for the mob. I didn't know it at the time, but I sort of knew maybe they were friends, and it turned out that my boss was Matty the Horse Ianello, who went to jail for many years. But I was working I had to work at night because you needed your days free to take classes and go to auditions and make the rounds. So I got a job initially as a waitress, and then I don't know if this is true, but I have been told by people who were there at the time that we became the first go-go dancers in New York City. But while I was working there, a man came in, and he was introduced to me. It was Philip Roth, the author. And he actually sat down and wrote out an entire scene from Goodbye Columbus on a cocktail napkin. And I'm a voracious reader, so I had read it. And I was like, oh, my gosh, this is Philip Roth. And then he asked me out, and we started dating. And we dated about 3 months. And then I came back to California. I was on my way to do summer stock, but I stopped back home to see my family, and I grabbed my closest girlfriend. I said, let's go to the bookstore. I need to show you a picture of Philip Roth, the guy I'm dating, And we went to the bookstore. I pulled down a copy of Letting Go, and there was Philip Roth. But it wasn't the guy I was dating. So that's the story I told on Johnny.
Yeah. Guys are so ridiculous. They'll do anything for a date, right? So now let's talk about when you first started Fiddler on the Roof. Now, like you mentioned, Bette Midler was your co-star, and was Zero Mostel in it?
Bette was playing Zeitel. She was brilliant. She was already in the role when I was cast. And so for my 2 weeks of rehearsal, I sat up in the balcony watching the show every night. And every night, she just brought me to tears. I knew what was coming, but she was brilliant. This was before the Divine Miss M. She got the idea. She started, putting her act together while we were doing Fiddler. And she used to come in every night with her new set list. It always started with Am I Blue? And then I knew from the moment I saw her on stage that she would be a superstar. I mean, there was no question in my mind.
So then your next role, you get Grease. You start Rizzo. You're the original Rizzo in the Broadway play of Grease, which millions and millions of people love. But, so what did you think of that? Did you actually compare it to the movie? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Dennis, I've never seen the movie.
Really?
I was in a boutique one day, and they had music playing over the loudspeakers, and I heard this song, and I thought, what is that song? It sort of sounds familiar. And I realized it was my song from the second act, There Are Worse Things I Could Do. But it was the movie version, and it was such a different take on the way we had done it originally. The original Broadway show was very gritty. I mean, it was not bubblegum in any way. It was pretty raunchy. In fact, one of the nicest compliments I ever got was when someone introduced me to Madeline Kahn, and she said, "You're an actress? I thought you were somebody they found off the streets," because it was really, very reality-based. And when I heard the approach they had taken to the song in the movie, I thought, oh, you know what? I don't think I want to see this. I don't want to be, I don't want to have my memories of what was a fantastic experience colored. So I've never seen it. I did see Grease too. I thought Michelle Pfeiffer was beautiful, and that's the extent of my experience with Grease.
Well, they should have had you as the Rizzo in the movie too. I got to say, because the one thing that bothered me, because my wife and daughter love this movie, my sister, every girl loves this movie, but the one thing that bothers me that most of the actors who are playing the high school kids, they look like they're in their 40s or something. So I never understood that. But so anyway.
I was doing Maude at the time,
oh, okay. There you go.
and even at that, I mean, we were all older, so they probably should have gone. I mean, if that was what your problem was with it, they could have gone even younger than me at that time. But,
so, all right. So now, you mentioned Maude. Let's talk about Maude. This was your breakthrough role, and this was a groundbreaking television show by Norman Lear, of course, starred B. Arthur. Now, so what are your memories about this? What did you think about this? Because I read something that you weren't really thrilled with the role of Carol, her character exactly.
You know what? It's only that Carol was the straight person,
Okay.
In my mind. I mean, people come up to me all the time and say, "Oh, you were so funny, you were so funny," and I keep thinking, I don't remember any jokes. I mean, I was sort of there to balance B and everything. It was a fantastic experience. I mean, and I took a lot of it for granted at the time because I'd never done television. I didn't know anything about television. And I just assumed that everyone was as loving and giving and professional and talented and fantastic to work with as B and the rest of the cast. We were, I mean, they were my family for 6 years. They remained my family. I still keep in touch with Bill Macy, who's still, out there playing golf whenever I run into him. He's on his way from the grocery store to the golf carts, and Norman was a genius, is a genius.
Yes.
We had incredible words, and the thing that I loved about it so much, yes, it was funny, but it was socially significant, and yet it didn't beat you over the head with the message. It made you laugh, and you got the message that way, and I don't watch situation comedy much anymore. I haven't come across any that I thought were, I don't know. But I was very, very fortunate and to be attached to that show.
Yeah, it's it's a classic show. I was just watching it last night. It's still on all the time, and
someone just sent just this morning. My manager sent me a clip from YouTube of the abortion episode, and
wow.
he just said, this still makes me tear up. It's amazing how relevant it is, 40 years later, and I watched it, and it was a great show.
It really was, yeah. And you guys, I'm pretty sure you were the first feminists on television.
We were. I think we were.
Yeah.
B certainly was. I mean, we were both. B had been married. I mean, Maud's character, B's character, Maud, was on her fourth husband. I don't know if anybody had ever had that before. And I was a divorced woman raising a child, and I was also, and very few people know this, and I think this is correct, and nobody's ever corrected me, the first gay character on a television show. It was a TV movie that John Carpenter directed called Someone's Watching Me. And, it it was just part of a conversation, but it sort of just slipped by very easily, and no one ever really picked up on it. But I got to play the first lesbian on TV that I know of. that I know of.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah. So yeah, the best roles. So now, yeah, let's talk about that. Your horror and sci-fi movies. How did that come about? And you must have picked them very selective, because they would just, they were like all classics. You had Swamp Thing, Fog, Creepshow. All these movies turned out to be classics later on.
Again, in part, I was fortunate. Maybe some of it was making the right decisions, because even now I get so many genre scripts to read, horror scripts to read, that you'd have to shoot me before I do them, because they're not good. So maybe I understood what was a good script and what wasn't. But at the time, well, the way it came about actually is in 1978, when Maude finished. In those days, if you were a star on a TV show, you couldn't be seen to audition for a film because the producers all felt that an audience member wasn't going to pay in the theater to see somebody they were seeing for free every week on their television set. And I think it probably started with Johnny Travolta, who went from Welcome Back, Kotter to Saturday Night Fever. But I don't think I'd ever even been approached about doing a feature. I'd done a lot of television films, a lot of guest stars, miniseries were big in those days, all of that stuff. But I got I got a call to go in and meet John Carpenter, who was pitched to me as this young, hot feature director who was doing his first television film, studio film, his first union film, really. And I think the reason John wanted to use me was because he had seen in my character in Maude the kind of strength in a woman and an actress that he liked to write. If you know anything about John Carpenter, you know that he was a huge fan of Howard Hawks, and he wrote what he called the Hawksian woman. They were strong women. And he watched Carol, and he called me in to meet me to see if I was, if I could do the same thing. And he hired me. And that was Someone's Watching Me. And then John and I fell in love. And so then he wrote The Fog and said, I've written this role for you. It was my first feature role. I'd really like you to do it. Read it, see what you think. I am not a horror fan. I've never seen Psycho. I laughed through The Exorcist. Wow. I don't like to see them. Maybe I remember Donovan's Brain back in the 50s, but the first horror film I ever saw was Halloween, after John and I got engaged, and I've never seen it since. I don't like to be scared. I don't like those feelings. So John hands me the script for The Fog, and I read it, and I'm thinking, well, it's really a good script, but it's, I wanted to make something like Coming Home or The China Syndrome, something that was socially significant. Let's do a film about abortion, But this is what I got offered, and of course, it's been one of the greatest roles, and one of the most enduring films of my career, and I love it, But at the time, it was like, oh well, I wanted to make people think. John wanted to make people jump, or feel, or run from the theater.
Yeah, they worked out great, and it was well done. Now,
and then I think because of my because The Fog was my first feature, and because I was identified with John, then I started getting other, genre scripts offered. I did a sci-fi thing over in Greece. I did Cannonball Run in the middle of all of that.
Of course,
but Creepshow came along, Swamp Thing came along.
You were also in another movie, one of my favorite movies, Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield.
Oh, yes.
How'd you like working with him? He must have been a lot of fun to work with.
Back to Rodney was, the thing that amazed me about Rodney, there was a line of women standing outside his trailer every day.
Wow.
and I thought, what is that? You know, he's a sex symbol, you know. But oh my God, the women just flocked to that man.
That's awesome.
And he was a sweetheart. He was a dear. I always said that the director should have had an Academy Award just for getting him to stand still, because he was so, and he always wanted to do, he'd be in the middle of the scene and then he'd start doing his own shtick from his act, you know, and the director would have to say, Rodney, that's really funny, but I don't think it works for the character here. You know?
We're trying to make a movie.
But he was great. He was great.
So now, one of my other favorite roles, and I don't know what happened with this show. I'm glad I got to talk to you, because you were in this HBO show called Carnival, and I just loved that show, and it just disappeared.
Dennis, that was the greatest job of my life. I mean, it was, I loved everything about it. Not only the character, who, you know, how many 50-year-old women get to do a sex scene like that, and then, or just get to do all of everything that I did. It was just an incredible role.
Yeah.
But the crew, the producers, the cast, the location. I was able to drop my kids off at school, go to work, come back and see my kids in the evening, you know. It was just a fantastic show. I think some people say, oh, it was ahead of its time. I don't know. What it was, I mean, the reason we didn't go a third season, the reason that we were presented with that we didn't go a third season, it was a very expensive show to produce because, you know, it took place in the 30s. And HBO had just had such huge successes with Sopranos and 6 Feet Under. And they were looking for those kinds of numbers, you know, a big crossover audience. And we were garnering them toward the end, and I think had we gone a third season, it would have just, you know, broken out. But they pulled the plug.
That was a shame. Great show.
It was.
Yeah.
It was.
So now let's start. You mentioned you're an author now. You wrote your memoirs and you wrote 3 novels now. So
yes.
How did this all start too?
It all started. I don't know if we've got enough time for all of this.
But, sure.
The capsule version is, I feel strongly that I got a message from beyond, from my closest girlfriend who had died in 1998, and through a series of very strange, I don't know, coincidences or something. I really feel like she sent me a message that I was supposed to start a specific writing class. I'd never written before in my life except for my journals, and had never, you know, thought about it. But I got this message, and I thought, well, okay, I'm supposed to go take this class. And I started this class. And never in my life did I think I would be talking to somebody about the fact that I had written books.
It's amazing. You've had like the most unique career, the best career. And now, is there like anything left though that you feel that you want to do that you haven't done yet?
Well, you know, a couple of years ago, I had posted on my website that, you know, it's been such an eclectic career that the only thing left for me to do was a high wire act or I don't know, an animal act or something. And then I got hired to play Bertha in the national tour of Pippin, and Bertha does her entire musical number hanging upside down 15 feet in the air from a trapeze. You know? So I'm not sure. I just want to keep going. I love it. I have such a good time. I'm not interested in directing. But I love what I do. It's never been work. I'm one of those people, you know. I don't feel like I've ever worked a day in my life.
Did you hear that they're remaking the Battle of the Network Stars, and you were so famously on this show?
I had someone request an interview about that. He was writing an article about that, and I told my manager, John, who you've been talking to, I said, well, I'll be happy to talk to him, but it's going to be a really short phone call because I don't remember any. All I really remember is on the third day or second day, I guess it was a weekend, we were out in Malibu. I remember driving home on the freeway and thinking, oh my God, I don't know if I can get my foot off the gas onto the brake in time to save my life because I was in such pain. And the light bulb went on. Adrienne, it's time to go to the gym. Your body's not going to take care of itself by itself anymore.
But it was funny. I heard that you were talking, I guess, to your manager or something, and you were saying that you thought that they wanted you because you were such a great athlete, and then you realized...
Well, maybe not because I was such a great athlete, but I thought they wanted me because I was, supposed to be there to win if I possibly could. I'm not a great athlete, and who knew? I mean, it didn't matter at all, did it?
Yeah, it was fun times. Yeah,
they were fun though. They were fun. It was an opportunity to be with all of the other, people from the studios and from the shows and.
Well, I want to thank you for calling in. Your voice still sounds beautiful as ever. You look great. I can't see you now, but I have seen recent pictures, and you look great, and your career is going great. And everyone, I got to go out and get that book. I have not read the book, but you said it's out on digital now. I'm definitely going to get that and all your books.
Yes, I think, I just got an email from my publisher today saying it'll probably be released in the next week or two. I mean, it is available hardbound and paperback, but
right.
It's and you can probably find it on Amazon, but it's out of print, so you're not going to find it in a bookstore. But
right. Awesome.
You might enjoy it. It's got some great stories about John and George Romero, and
yeah, I'm definitely going to enjoy this. Burt Reynolds, you said, and
Burt Reynolds. I dated Burt, and then we did. Oh well, it's got stories about Cannonball Run in there,
nice.
And Maud and Grease and all of that.
Yeah, best time. Yeah, excellent. So, all right, I want to thank you again. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Hey, welcome back live from Dennis's house here on 474 The Mix. Celebrity Profile. That was our interview with Adrienne Barbeau. What a great lady. She's done it all. Who else has done this much? She's done every possible thing you can do in show business. Acting, writing, singing, sex symbol, you name it, she's done it. So it's a great, great career, and glad to see she's still doing it. And go check out everything there is to do and everything there is to know. Adrienne Barbeau. Thanks for joining us here. Celebrity Profiles. Live from Dennis's house, 474 The Mix. This interview will be transcribed in Madhouse Magazine. See you next time.